This is CBC Here and Now.
He killed two innocent, law-abiding citizens from his actions. And his actions have left myself in a wheelchair, probably permanently.
A drunk driving case tossed.
Tonight, we learn why. One of the victims, now paralyzed, calls it a lack of justice.
Our next weather maker just on the doorstep now, already starting to see some snow. We're going to see snow and then some mild temperatures as we head through the day tomorrow.
Well, there are little ice rinks like this popping up on ponds all over Corner Brook. But the deputy fire chief wants to know, is it safe to play a game of hockey? He wants to know, are people checking the thickness of the ice?
4 inches for a person, but if you're putting 10 people out there, you have to calculate the weight of 10 people.
I'll have more tonight.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Tonight we have more details about a drunk driving case that fell apart this week in Gander. 22-year-old Nicholas Villeneuve was charged in a crash that killed 2 people and injured 2 more. But yesterday he was acquitted as the Crown Attorney lost key pieces of evidence. Tonight, for the first time, we can tell you what that evidence was and why it was thrown out. Here and Now's Garrett Berry has our top story.
Tonight, we can tell you that the key pieces of evidence in this case were blood samples taken from Villeneuve just 2 hours after the crash, as well as an admission made by the accused that he had consumed alcohol on the night of the incident. Both of those were thrown out in this decision that was published just hours ago. The turning point was about 30 minutes of interaction between Villeneuve and an RCMP officer who responded to the crash. The officer rode with Villeneuve in an ambulance and stayed near his bedside. But the officer did not immediately tell him about his right to remain silent. That didn't happen for another 30 minutes. And even then, the officer did not tell him that 2 people had died in the crash, nor did he tell Villeneuve that he had a right to a lawyer. During those 30 minutes, the RCMP officer engaged in what the judge called directed and focused questioning. Judge Mark Linehan ruled that was unacceptable and meant, in effect, that Villeneuve was detained without hearing his rights. That's illegal. So the evidence that was collected after that detention was thrown out. Villeneuve told the officer he had consumed alcohol. He also consented to a blood test. But the judge ruled that because Villeneuve was not quickly told about his right to counsel, nor fully told about what happened that night, his charter rights were breached. The judge wrote that his consent to answer questions and give blood samples was not fully informed. He wrote, the officer's failure to put his mind to Mr. Villeneuve's rights throughout the encounter was a serious breach of his duty as a peace officer. Later adding, the public must have confidence that those who are charged with the enforcement of laws do so while keeping their minds on the rights of all citizens. It's important to note we can't know whether this evidence would have secured a conviction. There was never a trial on this evidence. But yesterday, the Crown Attorney said its exclusion was part of the reason she concluded there was no reasonable likelihood of conviction. Garrett Berry, CBC News, Gander.
One of the survivors of that crash is Joshua Whiteway, the crash that killed his girlfriend's parents, John and Sandra Lush, and left Whiteway partially paralyzed. Reporter Ryan Cook has his perspective.
It was a senseless tragedy with 2 lives lost and a lot more changed forever. I spoke with crash survivor Josh Whiteway earlier today about the moment he found out justice wasn't going to happen.
And then on Friday, just this Friday past, we met with the Crown, and she made us aware that because of all that, we had no case left.
How did it feel to hear those words?
You know, it was infuriating, right? I just don't. It's a joke, you know. It's how do you throw out evidence, facts? This is not, you know. They thought they could smell beer, or they found a beer can in the back seat. You know, this is serious evidence. So I just don't. I don't know how the judge or how the accused or the lawyer, you know, can sleep.
How frustrating is it to now be a part of a system where everybody knows the common sense thing, everybody knows what happened, and it just seems like it doesn't matter?
Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? This is not a matter of opinion. This is evidence. You know, we know that he was impaired, severely impaired. We know that he was speeding. We know that his cell phone was active around the time of the accident. You know, so this is not, these aren't opinions. These are facts, scientific facts. And for it just to be thrown away based on, you know, his rights being violated is just disgusting. He killed two innocent, law-abiding citizens from his actions, and his actions have left myself in a wheelchair probably permanently, and you know, my girlfriend and her family has to deal with the loss of both of her parents in such a traumatic, you know, event, and to see it all come to an end, I'll say, like this is just really sad.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a bit about the crash, a bit about what you remember from it?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it all. There was just a big bang, and then the next thing, it was just survival mode. The car ignited, and myself and Suzanne were both in the back seats. Her parents were in the front, unresponsive, and she managed to crawl over my lap to get outside the door, and she was on the ground for what seemed like maybe 10 seconds, and by this point the fire grew to the point where it reached the back seats of the SUV, and I just sat there, and as she was pulling me from underneath my arms, I just watched my legs burn. And then I just remember being laying on the ground and, you know, in total disbelief of what had happened. And then everything after that kind of gets a bit blurry till I woke up in the hospital over 2 weeks later.
Whiteway was an engineer in Calgary before the accident. He had his whole life ahead of him. Now he's adjusting to a new normal. The Crown has 30 days to file an appeal, but Whiteway says that given everything that's happened in this case, he has little faith it will make any difference. Ryan Cook, CBC News, St. John's.
After a quiet day today, our next weather maker is on the doorstep. Already starting to see some snow for the southern portion of the island. The reason for that is this area of low pressure working its way across the maritime provinces right now. And I left those isobars on there. Those are those lines there. The tighter they are, the stronger the winds. So as we head through the night tonight, those winds are going to ramp up across the island. Wind warnings in place pretty much anywhere along the coast. You're looking at gusts anywhere from 80 to 130 kilometers per hour starting tonight in the west, and then we'll spread towards the east as we head into the morning. Wreck House area, you could see winds in excess of 150 kilometers per hour. That's prompting winter storm warnings for the northern peninsula, Green Bay, White Bay, as well as southeastern portions of Labrador. You're going to see a significant amount of snow. Just a quick idea right now, 30 to 50 centimeters for southeastern Labrador, otherwise 20 to 30 centimeters. The rest of the island looking at that snow tonight combined with those winds, and then that will move over to rain, transition to rain as we head into the early morning hours, but I will have more details on that coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, vandalism in CBS has delayed work on a new mosque. Last Thursday, members of the mosque found windows and lights smashed and a fireplace kicked in. That building is in the process of being converted. It's a bigger space than their northeast location. Now, the group had not announced the move or put up any signs yet. The mosque says it doesn't intend to press charges despite an estimated $10,000 in damages. Police have reportedly identified 3 minors as the vandals.
Multiple charges against a school principal have been dismissed. Robin McGraw, who was a K-7 principal at a school in CBS, was charged with 4 counts of assault and 1 count of uttering threats towards children. In provincial court this morning, a judge dismissed all of those charges. Here now's Jeremy Eaton explains why.
There were lots of tears, handshakes, and hugs this morning in courtroom number 5 after Judge David Orr dismissed charges against school principal Robin McGraw.
We're happy that all the charges have been dismissed. Every last one of the charges have been dismissed against this man. I'm sure he's very relieved.
During McGraw's trial, witnesses raised 13 different allegations against him, which reportedly happened during the 2017-2018 school year. The Crown accused the principal of assaulting 4 children with special needs, including stepping on a child's hand, dousing another one with water until they vomited, and dragging a child into the school from a car. The names of the children, teachers, and even the school are protected by a publication ban.
It's 970 odd days, approximately, since Mr. McGraw left the school. And you know, it's been a very tough time on the family.
Judge Orr pointed out that none of the parents were called to testify. He also had some issue with the Crown's witnesses, staff who worked at the school with McGraw, saying there were inconsistencies in some testimonies. Last year, it was revealed that the group all spoke with each other before going to police.
There was serious credibility and reliability concerns raised during this trial, and thankfully the court recognized them in the dismissal of every charge.
Another possible red flag, the timing of the complaint.
The fact that the complaints were not made until much later, after a fair bit of water under the bridge in some cases, is obviously a big concern. And it went to the credibility and reliability of the accounts.
As for what's next, McGraw's lawyer says he will be taking it day by day.
The future has got to look much better for him today, now that this cloud has been lifted.
Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Last night, the Liberals, the PCs, and NDPs squared off on education in an event hosted by teachers. The Liberals promised to modernize schools. The PC party said it would listen to teachers, while the NDP says schools need more resources. The CBC's Heather Gillis joins us now. So Heather, how did the debate go?
Carolyn, it was a pretty polite forum last night where the leaders of the Liberals, PCs, and NDP spent over an hour trying to convince teachers that their plan for education is the best. They had 6 questions and 90 seconds to answer on topics ranging from the number of teachers, support for teachers and students like guidance counselors, psychologists, speech-language pathologists, things like resources for small schools, violence in the classroom, teacher recruitment and retention. The NDP called for more investment in teachers and students and the elimination of combined grade classes. The PCs said they would improve outcomes, calling education a human right and public good that shouldn't be cut, while the Liberals pushed back on speculation about cuts, touting previous government spending in education. Here's some.
We have to make sure more resources are there for the students who need them. School counselors, educational psychologists, instructional resource teachers, student assistants, speech-language pathologists, behavior management specialists, and program specialists are vital student supports. When these services are lacking in our classrooms and public schools, we aren't saving money. We are passing an even bigger cost along to our overburdened healthcare and social assistance systems.
That public education is a fundamental human right, and that public education is a public good which provides educational opportunities for all children, no matter where they live, no matter what school they attend, and you don't cut fundamental human rights. I want to improve educational outcomes, not cut education funding, as contemplated by Premier Fury.
This past year, we put in place 350 additional teacher resources, including reading specialists, teaching and learning assistants, and learning resource teachers. We allocated even more teaching assistants, guidance counselors, and other teaching resources with the onset of COVID-19. That doesn't sound like cuts to me. While expanding our students' access to the internet and virtual learning was a goal, especially for rural and remote communities, the pandemic meant that we accelerated the purchase of new laptops for teachers and Chromebooks for students.
Well, tonight, Alison Coffin and Chess Crosby are going to square off again at a forum hosted by the Federation of Labour. That's tonight at 7:30. Liberal leader Andrew Furey won't be there. St. John's West candidate Siobhan Cody is going to be filling in for him. That's because Furey says he's preparing for another debate. That's tomorrow night at the House of Assembly. That's going to be after Here and Now, here on CBC, 7 o'clock Island time. Peter?
Thank you very much. That is Heather Gillis live in the newsroom tonight. And tonight we also want to shine a spotlight on the battle to represent the people of Placentia St. Mary's. Terry Roberts was there last week and has this look. Think we're working on it?
I was born and reared with the motto of if you can't say something good about someone, say nothing at all.
He knows my work ethic and he knows what I can deliver.
Plenty of talk about roads, clean drinking water, healthcare services. They seem to be the hot button issues playing out here in Placentia St. Mary's, amid what is a hotly contested election campaign between a battle-tested Liberal incumbent who's trying to shed the clouds of controversy and a member of the Manning family, PC party stalwarts here in this province.
She's the incumbent, the one to beat, and despite a tumultuous 3 years, is brimming with confidence.
I feel like it's too good.
Hi, my name is Calvin Manning. I'm your PC candidate in the district of Placentia St. Mary's for the upcoming election on February 13th.
He's the spirited challenger, campaigning old school style in this era of physical distancing, and spouting this buzz line at every opportunity.
I'm hearing a lot of, why are we having an election in the middle of the winter, in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of the North Atlantic, before the Green Report and before budget presented to the people. I'm hearing that a lot.
That folksy intonation. Sound familiar? If you're a political watcher, it should be. This first-time candidate is the brother of Senator Fabian Manning, a family name synonymous with politics and business in these parts. So is Gambin Walsh intimidated?
Not one bit worried. I represent the people on the ground, the individuals, the seniors, the youth, the everyday ordinary citizen. Names mean nothing to me.
This is what's up for grabs, a district that touches 3 bays, and voters have a lot to consider. Overlook everything that's happened with Gambin Walsh and deliver her a 3rd election victory? From her involvement in the House of Assembly harassment scandal to her eviction last year from cabinet and a subsequent RCMP investigation that revealed she breached cabinet confidentiality.
Did I make a mistake confirming for a friend something that he already knew? Yes, I did. I have admitted that I did make a mistake, that given my position at the time, I should not have confirmed that for him. So that was an error.
Yeah.
The Tories smell blood. 3 people contested the nomination. 1,800 people signed up to vote. Manning emerged as the candidate. One of his opponents is now deeply involved in his campaign.
We believe in the party turning this district blue.
Gambin Walsh, meanwhile, was the only Liberal incumbent to face a nomination fight. She fended off the challenge from Andrew Priddy. In a further twist, Priddy is now supporting the PC candidate.
He obviously wasn't a Liberal candidate. If he ran against me to be a Liberal, he ran against me as a person.
It's a much-watched political cage match where you never know how the combatants will interact, with the voters calling the final tune on February 13th. Terry Roberts, CBC News, Placentia.
Well, there is a 3rd candidate in this race. Clem Whittle is running for the NL Alliance, but an illness has prevented him from campaigning. While talking about the campaign, today the NDP echoed a message presented in the House of Commons calling on a dental plan for Canadians earning less than $90,000 a year who don't have coverage. The NDP says that plan would help thousands of people in this province. Meanwhile, the Liberals are vowing to steer Newfoundland and Labrador towards more aquaculture projects. Today, the party said it will invest in local businesses, strengthen jobs, and create new opportunities in the processing industry. The PCs, for their part, are promising to undo years of cuts for seniors.
I'm glad you asked me about equalization at supper, because it's a topic of tremendous importance. A lot of people forget what the importance of the Atlantic Accord is to the prosperity of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah, Dad.
And
Yeah.
The PCs also released a new video poking fun of their leader, Chess Crosby. The PCs promised a full review of long-term care homes, saying seniors should stay in their homes as long as possible with some support. The PCs also pledged to open hospices in Grand Falls, Windsor, and build a long-term care centre that would cover Stephenville, Port-au-Port, and Bay St. George. Well, on the COVID front, there are no new cases of COVID-19 to report today, although Ottawa has unveiled a plan to get vaccines produced here at home. 2 companies are on track to make vaccines in Vancouver and Montreal.
And you know, we've heard how those ultra low temperature freezers have been vital to the distribution of vaccines, but why would anything need to be stored at 80 degrees below zero?
Here now, Zach Gowdy dropped by MUN's Faculty of Medicine for this ultra cool science lesson.
An ultra-low freezer we like to call ULT, or ultra-low temperature freezer, that allow temperatures to drop as low as 80 to 90 degrees below zero Celsius. The freezer gets very cold, so we're standing in a hallway right now, Zach, where it's about 20 degrees Celsius. Minus 80 is 100 degrees colder than that. So if you can equate freezing water versus boiling water, that's the difference between the air inside that freezer and the air we're breathing at room temperature right now.
Science.
The reason for ultra-low temperature is to maintain the integrity of very, very important labile items, which means they're very prone to degradation. So things like mRNA, for example, that everybody knows about because of the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, those items are very prone to degrade. So by keeping everything cold, it stops the molecular movements that might cause degradation of those strands of mRNA.
Some things need to be stored colder than others because basically they're less stable. Molecules vibrate, and the more they're vibrating, the more they can degrade. So if you can get them down to minus 50, minus 60, minus 80, they'll preserve longer. If you open the freezer right now in my lab and you put your hand on it, on the inside, it would stick to the inside within seconds. You're looking at minus 40, minus 50, I think, in the Antarctica. Here you're 20, 30 degrees lower than that. So right now we're in my lab. My students are working in the background. We've been basically looking at immune responses in people that were infected with the virus back in the spring. Now, of course, we're hoping to look at the antibody responses to the vaccines that are going to be rolled out. It was ironic to see that suddenly everybody in the world was trying to get their hands on things that we just use to keep stuff cold. Well, if regular objects are chilled that cold, depending on the composition of the object, it can do different things. So things do get more brittle, more breakable kind of as they get colder and colder.
Given the fact that the mRNA vaccine story was on the go a little early in this as one of the key and maybe quicker ways to combat this epidemic, in the back of our minds we knew that ultra-low temperature freezers would definitely be a part of this story.
Well, taking a look at the current wind gusts, 91 kilometers per hour for the Rec House area. Those winds are going to continue to increase as we head through the night tonight. I'll have all the details coming up.
Well, despite the mild weather in many parts of the province, some people are still skating and riding on ponds. Now, that's prompted a fire department on the West Coast to speak out about safety, telling people to steer clear. Here Now's Colleen Connors explains.
Well, this was the spot to be this weekend on the West Coast. These sweet little ice rinks in people's backyards all over Corner Brook. People out playing hockey and having a skate. But the deputy fire chief in Corner Brook wants to warn people about the thickness of the ice. Now, the standard is that most people do check the thickness, and the standard for one person is about 4 inches or 10 centimeters, the length of your cell phone. But Harnham wonders, is that thick enough?
So if you look at that, you say we have 4 inches of ice here, but then we put 10 and 12 and 14 of the average people out on that ice surface for a quick skate or a game of hockey. Now we're heading into the weight of a small car. So we have to look at the factor of the amount of people that we're putting out there. So, you know, again, it's common sense. Check your ice and watch your ice levels. My recommendation to play hockey would be 5 to 6 inches of good solid ice.
Harnham posted this warning to social media: stay off unchecked ice. His post came after the fire department got a call from a resident who saw some school-aged kids walking on the ice near Glenmullen Pond. The Red Cross recommends ice thickness to be 15 centimeters for walking or skating, 20 centimeters for skating parties or hockey games, and 25 for snowmobiles. Harnham says the backyard rinks on the shallow pond water can be quite deceiving.
Sometimes the bottom, even though there's only maybe a foot or two of water, and the average person is going to say, I'm not going to drown in that. Well, there's probably 5 or 6 feet of mud. And once you penetrate through the ice or break through the ice and then you become stuck in the mud, you have a tendency to continue on sinking in the mud.
Harnham stresses the importance of knowing the weight of your machine as well.
Just because your friend scoots across on a skidoo and he says, hey, I checked it and there's 6 inches of ice, so you probably make the decision to chase him on your side-by-side. Well, your side-by-side is probably 2 to 3 times as heavy. Then you got 2, maybe 3 people in there, so you're driving the weight up to a small car. So I think what we need to drive home is that concentration of weight on the ice that we're putting on the ice.
Harnham's warnings are really strong this year because of the inconsistent weather we've had on the West Coast. He says that we're due for mild 7 degrees later this week and also some very cold temperatures. So the key, if you're going out on the ice, whether to skate, snowmobile, or on ATV, check the thickness. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Massey Drive.
This weather forecast is brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. Somewhere out there is a winter with your name on it. Find it now at stayhomeyear.ca.
Well, some good words of advice on safety there on the West Coast, and 7 degrees? Really, it's going to get that warm?
It's going to, yeah, we could see actually double digits, in fact, on the plus side of the mercury as we head through today, tomorrow. Yeah, and that's thanks to that area of low pressure that I've been talking about. But it started cold today. If you walked out the door in Corner Brook, this is what you were sitting at, minus 13 this morning, minus 24 in Badger. Note the difference in those low-lying areas. And then because of some cloud cover and some winds, minus 3, minus 4 for eastern areas of the island. And then the cold spot was Labrador at minus 32. Warmed up quite nicely though, most places reaching the minus single digits, even 0 degrees in Port-aux-Basque. That's the current temperature right now. And we're going to continue to see those temperatures rise as we head through the night tonight. And that is thanks to this area of low pressure that's already bringing some snow down along the south coast. That's going to continue to spread north as we head through the overnight tonight. Take a look at this future tracker, spreading those that snow north and east as we head into the early morning hours. We'll see a transition through to this pink is ice pellets for the most part, maybe some freezing rain in the mix with that as well. But as we head into the early morning hours, most areas across the island and southeastern portions of Labrador will be seeing snow, if not transition to ice pellets or rain right along the south coast of the island. So those temperatures should sit around the 0 degree mark or maybe above as you head into the early morning hours, but those winds are really going to ramp up as we start to see that area of low pressure move closer. Like I said, already seeing wind gusts about 91 kilometers per hour for the Rec House area, and they will just continue to strengthen as we head through the night. Looking at wind gusts upwards of 150 kilometers per hour, and anywhere really along the coast, you could see gusts anywhere from 80 to 130 kilometers per hour. Another cold night for Labrador, minus 30 for you in Lab City, and then temperatures into the minus double digits for Cartwright at minus 17. So here's a look at that future trackers. We head into tomorrow afternoon. That snow will make its way towards the southeastern portion of Labrador and stay quite heavy through the day. And then we'll see that transition to rain. So by lunchtime, everything should have transitioned over to rain for most of the island, except the northern peninsula. You're going to continue to see snow mixed with some ice pellets, eventually ending as either showers or drizzle as we head into the evening hours. And we might see some ice pellets for southeastern portions of Labrador as well. And that rain will generally continue. And that's because temperatures are going to be up well above zero. One more time, just going to show you what to expect. The heaviest rain will be along the south coast of the island where there are rainfall warnings. You're looking at 25 to 45 millimeters of rain. Again, this will transition to rain in the morning and continue through the day. In the east, you're looking at trace to maybe 5 centimeters of snow through to ice pellets, maybe some freezing rain, and then about 5 to 15 millimeters of rain for the west coast and towards central, anywhere from 5 to 15 millimeters. 5 to 15 centimeters of rain, followed by 5 to 15 millimeters of rain into the afternoon. And then the heaviest snow looks like it'll fall for the southeastern portion of Labrador, where you could see an excess of 30 to 50 millimeters, 30 to 50 centimeters of snow. Getting that all confused. Lots of rain and snow in the forecast. Here's your temperatures tomorrow. Many areas potentially reaching the double digits. Winter storm warnings for the northern peninsula as well as southeastern Labrador. And again, that's because you're going to see all that snow and gusty conditions continuing for most of the day. The winds will eventually ease in the southeast as you head into the afternoon, but it'll take a while for those winds to ease as you head further east as well. So expect wind gusts anywhere from 100 to 130 kilometers per hour, certainly in those exposed areas. As we head through Thursday, the system is going to continue to see that southeasterly flow, which means temperatures will be well above zero again, and some showers, 6 to 8 degrees. And then we're looking at temperatures hovering around the 0 degree mark for Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Same thing for Cartwright, minus 7 for Labrador. That's well above where you should be sitting this time of year, certainly for Nain at minus 5. And these warm, mild temperatures will continue as we head into Friday as well. They're going to dip a little bit for the island, and then we're going to start to see some snow in play, but it will be generally unsettled. And by snow, I just mean flurries mixed in or changing over to rain into the afternoon. These mild temperatures will continue into pretty much the end of the weekend. We're looking at above zero temperatures. Overnight lows, though, will start to dip, and that's why we'll see a chance of some flurries in the mix there, certainly on Sunday with some sunshine in play as well. For central Newfoundland, you're looking at anywhere from 1 to 3 degrees as you head into the weekend. And again, those overnight lows into the minus single digits. By the weekend, Saturday night into Sunday, certainly it looks like we could be into a snow squall setup. So certainly something to keep an eye on for you for western portions of the island as your temperatures hover around the 0 degree mark. And then for eastern Labrador, well above seasonable temperatures into the 0 to minus 1 degree range. And then same thing for western Labrador. By Sunday, we'll start to see some cooler air move in, and overnight lows will dip back into those minus double digits. I wanted to share this photo of the sun setting in Fox Harbour. This was actually at the end of January, but I wanted to share this beautiful shot. Thank you so much to Mary Murray for sharing that with us. And if you have any weather photos you'd like to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
back. Well, how much does it cost to run a town in this province? Many mayors say too much.
Some communities are trying to find a way around that by coming together to save on costs. Not amalgamation, but rather regionalization.
Now, 4 neighboring towns in Conception Bay Centre are trying that approach. Here now's Jane Adey traveled to the region to speak with 2 mayors involved.
Mike Doyle is the mayor of Harbour Main Chapels Cove Lakeview. Craig Williams is the mayor of Conception Harbour. They're putting their heads together with the mayors of Avondale and Colliers. The regionalization of their communities is focused on one main win: saving money, a lot of money.
The one thing about municipalities is that we have a lot more in common than we are different. We all have ideally the same services. You know, we're doing waste diversion and recycling, waste management, taking care of roads, sewers and water and fire departments. We all have that in common. It's just a matter of working together, start breaking down the silos between the municipalities and start having a conversation. That's really where it starts, to understand, what's it costing you and what's it costing us.
Turns out there's an incredible amount of duplication in municipalities, and when you're right next door to one another, isn't that wasteful?
Myself and Mayor Doyle sat down when we started crunching numbers. We look at engineering fees for all our capital works, and we can't get approved without an engineer to go over it. And the 4 towns in the last 3 years has spent almost $700,000 in engineering fees, which is, so we're looking to save money there. If it comes to a point where we can have an engineer on staff between the 4 towns, that may be an option. Even an economic development officer, if between the 4 towns, if we split the salary between 4 and get that money back every year in our grant and applications, that's money in our pocket. Even with our current water supplies, everyone has their own water supply. Everyone has a water technician within the 4 towns, and that's something that we can look at as well.
Our waste management, we're spending around $250,000 a year in waste management here, and when we start to look at that, you start to understand there's some instant savings there. Presently, we have 4 towns with 4 different contracts dealing with their waste management, and we did have the opportunity to meet with our contractor since this regionalization idea came to play and just ask them, if you were bidding on 3,000 people over 1,000 people, would you be able to give us a better rate? And he paused for a second and said, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure we could do that. So right away, you see, even the contractors themselves realize, hey, we can do something here for you, right?
Then you look at probably the low hanging fruit. Earlier this year, if you look at the very low hanging, we went to Town of Conception Harbour went to put in an order for backyard composters. You had the minimum order was 40. That was more than what we needed. That was probably 5 years worth for what the people would come and buy. So we partnered with Harbour Main and bought 20 each in order to be able to qualify for that minimum order. So it's small. This could be small things. It could be larger things. We're open to everything.
Salt and sand, that's a quick win right there. If we can just get one bulk order of salt and sand in here and split that cost, that's instant savings right there. Not to mention that when we do things like that, now we're reducing the wear and tear in our infrastructure of a bunch of different trucks going up and down the highway, hauling different loads for different towns. And the emissions, think of the emissions reduction if we get one load out here instead of hauling 4 different loads out here each time. That's immediate emissions reductions. There's a lot of work that these little communities can do that are gonna not only contribute to our economy, they're gonna contribute directly to the environment as well.
Our annual budget is less than $500,000. So, any money that we can save, we have a place for it.
Doyle and Williams point to the example of churches, limited income and expensive infrastructure to maintain.
We don't want to end up like the churches having to fight for every...
Some churches are having to close down. They just don't have the membership and they can't afford the operating costs. Guess what? We're not so different.
Right.
We start losing our membership here and we can't get our operating costs under control. We're in the same situation. And at the end of the day, this is about saving money for the taxpayers. I had the question to say, how is regionalization different, right? than amalgamation? I've been asked that question. Amalgamation is expensive, it's costly, it's timely, there's a lot of policies and procedures. It's really cumbersome to try to get that off the ground. And as small communities, we don't have the time. Our problem is right now. Our budgets right now are dwindling. We're seeing grants from the province dwindling. We're seeing the grants from the feds dwindling. We need to do something, and we need to do that now. And the quickest way to do that is sit around the table together, say, what does it cost us now, and how can we make it cheaper tomorrow? Our governance structure isn't broken. It's working well in all 4 communities. It's our services that we need to figure out. We need to save our taxpayers, our stakeholders, as much money as we can at the end of the day. They expect that of us. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to work together to find them savings for them. We want our residents to stay here. We want new residents to come here. And so we need to be sustainable, and we need to be cost effective. We need to be the economical place to live. And so by working together, I think we can achieve that. I think the government needs to be engaged is the first part. I'm one that believes it has to be built at the municipal level. We know what our issues are. We need to sort of get the numbers together for them to say, and here's where we need you to help us. They have a role to play here, and that's something that, the 4 mayors, we're really trying to achieve here for the entire province, is that, while we're sort of doing this groundbreaking regionalization project and trying to work through this, we want to build a best practice. We want to do it so somebody's not going to have to go through all the lumps and bumps and learnings that we're about to go through. But all the mayors here, we have full-time jobs. Being a mayor is a part-time activity that we do out here, and so that's going to take support for somebody to help us build a best practices document. We're going to need the government to help us to explain and show us how do we do joint procurement. We've never done that before. How do 4 towns apply for one application for a load of sand? We want a regional fire training center here to lower our costs for the training of our fire department members, bring in new revenue. Once again, how do we do that? Those are all provincial government policies and standards that are generally written for each municipality. So the challenge to the candidates is, start thinking about regionalization. This is how some of these smaller communities are going to survive. And it really takes a little work. We'll do our work, but you have to do your part.
Well, it sounds like you do have a blueprint that many other communities will be interested in to save a lot of money. I wish you well with it.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Politicians haven't been talking much about the fiscal challenges facing this province, but other people certainly are, not just within Newfoundland and Labrador, but outside as well. A new report out today from the C.D. Howe Institute called The Rock in a Hard Place takes a look at the problem and some solutions. Don Drummond is one of the co-authors. He's also former chief economist with TD Bank. Thanks for joining us.
You're most welcome.
So the parties have avoided talking about cuts. How sustainable is the current spending in Newfoundland and Labrador?
I don't think it's sustainable at all. The debt level is extremely high, and it's not just high because of COVID-19. The debt ratio has been very high for quite some time, really starting way back in 2012, 2013, and then hit again with the weakening of the oil prices. So unless the offshore royalties come back in a very fulsome manner, and I don't think that's a bet that anybody should be placing at this time, the current level of spending and the growth rate of spending is not sustainable at all. It has to be ratcheted quite a bit. You think the offshore royalties hit almost $3 billion a year at their peak, and they're only expected to be $500 million this year, and probably won't be that much higher than that over the next couple of years. And yet, when they were really high, the spending was ramped up to spend all the proceeds, and that spending never came back down when the royalties came back down.
What about the argument that we've heard that this is an expensive province to run because you have a small population spread out over a large area, so you're just going to have higher spending because that's the cost of doing business?
In the early 1990s, the spending per capita in Newfoundland and Labrador was similar to the Canadian average. It really changed when the offshore came into place. And you know, that maximum, when you have a non-renewable resources that is likely to be cyclical, you really shouldn't spend all the proceeds because you can't guarantee they'll always be there. But essentially, that's what happened. It all got spent.
So where do you think the province could focus on cutting costs?
Well, with any government, and particularly a provincial government, I hate to say it for the great civil servants of the province, but the wage bill is very high. It's high in terms of the number of civil servants. It tends to be high in some areas in terms of the wage, but that's where their largest expenditure. Their obviously healthcare is very high. It's by far the highest per capita in Canada, and that does speak to that disparate population that you mentioned, that it makes the service cost somewhat higher, but that would have to be looked at as well. Have to look at some different privatization options. I think the province will have to do multiple things on Muskrat Falls, probably accept a lower rate of return from it. And I think, come on, the federal government, they were aiding and abetting this project with loan guarantees. I think they have to cut some slack and join in that effort as well. It's going to take a lot of things to get the fiscal footing back to a sustainable basis.
Now, in your report, you talk about getting to a balanced budget by 2025, 2026. How feasible is that, really?
Oh, I think it's definitely feasible. Some of the spending reductions will come quite naturally if and when the pandemic settles down, because the extraordinary expenses to deal with that can be ratcheted back. And then a couple of $100 million would have to be taken off on top of that, basically rolling back program spending to where it was a couple of years ago. There wouldn't be extraordinarily large cuts, but I never want to dismiss the difficulty of doing that. I'm not trying to suggest it's going to be easy, but it's not like spending has to be rolled back by 10 or 15% or anything near to that kind of magnitude.
Interesting perspective. I appreciate you sharing it with me today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
On your street, on your street. This is Jack and Graham for Mrs. Bishop's class. Jack Bishop the groundhog did not see his shadow. We repeat, did not see his shadow. So on early spring, this is Graham and Jack at St. Matthew's School in St. John's, Newfoundland. On your street.
So cute. So and delivering great news in early spring. Thank you so much for that. That was super sweet. And it's going to feel kind of spring-like, I guess, over the next couple of days with the mild temperatures
that are headed our way tomorrow, certainly. Yeah, let's take a look, quick recap of the forecast tomorrow. Temperature-wise, anyway, you can see a number of areas seeing those temperatures bump up anywhere from 6 to 10 degrees tomorrow. So if you do wake up to snow, it will transition through to ice pellets and eventually rain into the afternoon. Again, the south coast looking at the highest amount of rainfall, anywhere from 25 to 45 millimeters of rain. And then the northern peninsula and southeastern Labrador, you will see the most snow, with anywhere from 20 to 30 centimeters of snow. Southeastern Labrador, upwards of 50 is certainly possible by Thursday.
So safe to say that it's going to be pretty messy on the morning commute.
It definitely will be. Take your time.
And it was nice to see some agreement amongst the groundhogs, because the official groundhogs, same sort of forecast, early spring. So if all four are in agreement, then
great news
it
all
must
around.
speak the truth.
For sure. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.